All right, welcome back to the Lawyer Dana Show at CPAC, and we have JD Miniear. And so, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my wife, who was a pastor, and she did pass away last year, but
My condolences on that.
But Christina and I started in 2015, 2016 with the Indiana Bicentennial, looking into the question, how did Indiana get the Hoosier nickname? What is the real story behind this? And we consulted Dave Barton, wall builders, and some other historians, and I had my own materials at home that my great-granddaddy left me some ancient books. And we discovered it's a black preacher named Harry Hoosier, who was...
I got editing myself because I was going to make a Who's Your Daddy joke. Ultimate Who's Your Daddy?
But he never married. But he's a little black preacher, small, very powerful in spirit.
Big and
he
hard.
was born in 1750 in North Carolina, born as a slave.
Oh, wow.
And he never learned to read or write. But he made his way in his 20s and 30s. He made his way up to Baltimore, and this family named Gough. It turns out they were mercantile traders and had a big plantation in Baltimore. And that home is now a National Historical Place because that is where the Methodists had their first conference. Harry was a circuit riding Methodist. And he got his freedom there.
How did he get his freedom? Do you know?
Well, he got emancipated, and back in the 1700s, you could actually purchase freedom for slaves. And a little interesting thing is,
so was he emancipated by purchase?
I think so. We were looking and looking. It all points in various journals and in historical documents that it was this Gough family because he worked for them, but he got his freedom and he started being a carriage driver for Francis Asbury, who at the age of 26, John Wesley of the Methodists sent him to America to help found the American Methodist Church. Because John Wesley had been earlier in Georgia with his brother and it didn't turn out so well.
So there wasn't a Methodist church until he founded it?
Well, 1784, at the Go Home, it was a Christmas conference, and Harry was one of two black preachers who were invited, and they ordained Francis Asbury, and Harry was his carriage driver. But it didn't take long for Asbury, and they would go tens of thousands of miles up and down the eastern seaboard.
That's a lot with a horse.
Oh, gosh.
And a carriage. How many of those tires do you think you had to repair?
Yes.
That's not an easy repair either.
No, saver miles or anything like that. You're just, but they did it. And where he would go, it didn't take long. First of all, Asbury, Harry can't read or write, but he memorized hymns and scriptures. And it didn't take long that Asbury said, Harry, you can preach better than I can. Wow. And so he started turning him loose. And so Harry became in 1781, not too far from here, probably about 6 miles from here. It's called Falls Church, and there's a cemetery, but there's a plaque that honors him. And
Is he buried there?
No, but there's a plaque that honors what he did. 1781, he large gathering. Remember, this is not Washington, D.C. Incorporated. That didn't happen until 1800 when they made the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. But still, Harry preached in that site, and whites and blacks, first time a black preacher ever had them all together, the mixed races, and he was dynamite. And some of the founding fathers said, this is the greatest preacher I've ever heard in my life.
Wow.
And then in 1784, he would go over to Delaware and be the first black preacher in American history to preach to an all-white congregation in a place called Chapeltown. And he just kept racking up.
That's an appropriate place to do it.
And our website, harryhoosierproject.org, we've got a lot of pictures of like the Chapeltown Church.
Wow.
And at Falls, it's a cemetery now here, not far from Arlington, but my wife and I put the Christian flag next to that plaque. This is in 2018, and then the Indiana flag. Because as I was talking to you before we did, the show prep and everything, Harry's the reason there's a bill that would honor him and make it official for the state of Indiana, HB 1053, this session, that he's the nickname sake.
Wow.
But we have a legal trauma.
Okay. There's always a legal trauma.
It was 2013. The bill first came out. I think it was 1143 was the number on the bill. And my wife, when she was feeling better, we testified. It got tabled by committee. A lot had to do with that the people who went last were from IUPUI history department, and they just I thought they spoke some falsehoods. They said, oh, we don't trust our history department don't trust the experts that you're quoting. And I thought, well, a lot of you can look at our website. There's a lot of those experts. I mean, they're award winning, but so how committee chairmen will get nervous.
Mm-hmm.
So now in 2023. That started in 2024. We got further with the bill, but I couldn't go down. But they got pretty close. But it was determined that Amtrak had the copyright to the term Hoosier State because a train used to run from Indianapolis to Chicago for years. It was called the Hoosier State.
I would think that they would want to be a part of the whole thing and bring some notoriety to the whole thing. Did they get on board? Pun intended.
That was good. I love that. They tabled again because someone did a revenue study. Could you believe that? This bill.
Yes, I can. After Doge, I can believe anything.
State could lose millions of dollars because they could get sued if we do this. Make Harry the Hoosier nickname. Now, about a month ago, the Indiana University Public TV folks asked me to come down. I did an interview with them, and then they spliced that. They taped me for like 35 minutes, and then they actually showed about 25 seconds.
Yeah, of course. That's how that works. Yeah. We're actually showing this whole thing. It's live. We're not editing you. You can say it.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Well, but they did bring in it was a Friday news clip, so I was part of that. And but actually, I was about a third of when made it something on paper, which also was spread around the newsletter, or whatever. I got in there, but the professor of law down there, one of them said, "I think it'll pass this time because if they just make it a declaration as opposed, I don't know what else it would be. I think it'll pass." But that was been the thing we got to get over. But you could, just interviewing me and getting this word out. I'm going back to Indiana and I'll share the clip.
Absolutely.
But Harry, I mean, he did so many groundbreaking things.
Like what?
Well, let's go to fast forward a little bit to we talked about 1784.
Did he make a giant silver erectile shaped rocket to go to Mars? Oh, yeah, that's a different guy. That's somebody else. who actually may be about to speak here and interrupt our interview, but keep going.
Well, he's kind of related because Harry was all about the heavens.
Oh,
because he was praying.
We're bringing it around. Comedy comes in threes.
Yeah, that's right. He always was about heaven and bringing heaven down to earth, the kingdom.
Are there any of his sermons that got recorded?
Well, they wrote some stuff up, like the one in 1781. He preached on the barren fig leaf, which is in the Gospels.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, you have this large group of whites and blacks, first time ever, all listen to Benjamin Rush, by the way, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, a founding father. When he heard Harry make that speech, he goes, "My God, this is the greatest preacher I've ever heard in my life."
Wow.
And but so Harry used that parable, and he used it often. The Holy Spirit led him. I mean, there's a lot of stories. I'm hoping to make a movie in the next year, because what's coming up was President Trump declared in January with the executive order, we're going to celebrate 250 years.
Yeah.
America's, how do we say that? Sesquicentennial?
You should talk to this guy.
Okay.
He's an actor. He's
Kevin and
Kevin Sorbo's son.
Yes.
They may be interested in that's the type of movie that would be really good.
I talked to Kevin.
I need to take a picture of that before you go. That's the only one I got, but I'll give it to you.
Okay.
Keep going.
So Harry, he was unbelievable in how he could bring reconciliation to the races. And so with that barren, he would look to the whites and he'd say, "You've got to treat slaves better, and anybody that you come in contact with, you got to love them." And then he turned to his black compatriots and he say, "And you got to be holy." and you've got to work together. And that was how he preached.
Wow.
But a lot of incredible
powerful.
things. He would baptize more people, him and Asbury, in one day than Asbury said. He goes, back in England, he goes, our Methodist clergymen, they don't baptize this many people in their entire career. And
Wow.
we're doing it in one day.
Wow.
And then in 9/11, 1786, in New York City probably had, 20,000 people in 1786.
The
population.
9/11 on the 10th year of our country existing.
Yes. Well, 1786. Yes. This New York Packet put out this article, and they said, come. He goes, listen to this black preacher tonight. Everybody turn out. And over 1,000 people. So that's pretty big.
That's a lot back then.
Yeah, 20,000.
Because it's not an insignificant journey to bring 1,000 people together at that period in time.
No. And I've been to that church, and there's a plaque, and it was blue, wood church. It's brick now, but it's also right next to Ground Zero. Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting enough. So I keep talking about, I want to make a movie, and my friend, I'm going to give you one of his books, Pastor Steve Gray and his wife, Kathy. I think they're America's top revivalists, because back in 1996, they started what was called the Smithton Outpouring in Missouri, little church, 532 people, little church, and 250,000 came from around the world to this church because revival.
Wow.
God was so strong.
Wow.
And continues to this very day.
Wow.
So Steve's made a movie, him and Kathy, and so he said, I'll consult you.
This would be a great movie.
Well, and it's our 250th year celebration. So we want to think about 250 years of Judeo-Christian history in America. And we had the Great Awakening. We wouldn't have, the Black Robe Regiment, like Dave Barton talks about. Dave Barton helped us to get this thing started, my wife and I. But revival is how America beats the British.
I'd like to be involved in that movie in some kind of way.
Oh, Dan, please.
I'd act in it or do something or be involved in the writing or something like. That's a great story.
It is.
That's a great story.
It is.
So our Worthy Vision Company, the only so Lawyer Dana Podcast, the only one for it at the moment. But the whole point of this company is Worthy Visions, WVC.
Yes.
And it's purposeful.
Yes.
And you'll notice our color scheme drifts a little bit red, but we've got a combination
royal,
purple. It's blue, purple. It's the combination. It's to bring the country together.
Yes.
And blue on the left, red on the right.
Well, you know what,
Symbolism.
Mr. Steve, I was at this church last week, and I live in Indianapolis, and I used to live close to the track, and it's 500 miles from Indy to Kansas City. And I said, you'd be great. Harry was pretty good friends with George Washington. And
let me play George Washington.
Well, you
because I look like George Washington.
Well, you know who we talked about, Pastor Steve and I, Donald Trump would be a good George Washington.
Yeah, but he's not going to be available for it. Look, and here's the other thing.
He could do a cameo. You never know.
He seems
especially you mentioned Kevin Sorbo.
If we maybe, but I doubt it. Maybe in about 4 years he'll be available.
We can't take much time. No, but this won't get started for a little while. We've got to raise funds, and we have the scenes. We've got to turn it into a script.
I might have a guy that might be able to put some money into it too. So yeah, we could talk about it.
But it's true revival, and so out in Kansas City, they've got a number of books they've been publishing over the years. You had the Great Awakening, then Great Awakening 2, and Harry kind of was in both, because after 1800, Harry had to be until 1806. He died in Philadelphia in 1806. But Harry, and then we had another tremendous revival at the time of the Civil War. So, America
needed a lot of prayer at that particular time.
Yes, we did. And the 1619 Project and New York Times says, oh yeah, Abraham Lincoln was a racist, and
yeah, he was really he was the worst racist in the history of the country.
You're smart ones.
I don't think that word means what they think it means.
No, I don't either. We said dialectical materialism, and they got dialectical ethnicity and race. They're always pitting everything against each other, everybody dividing, and God brings us together. And when his spirit is thick, as it was when Harry would preach, I mean, one time he was invited, wealthy home in New Jersey, and the lady, and they're bringing all the town's leaders and everything. And so he's with Asbury. And so Asbury speaks, and the lady says, I'm not letting a black man preach here at my house. And the Lord told Harry, go out in the garden and pray while Asbury does his thing. And the Lord said, yeah, I want you to go back and mount, that little podium and start preaching. And, I can just imagine Harry's little, and he's thinking, she doesn't want me to do that.
Well,
but I'll be obedient, Lord.
She's not particularly the authority.
Yeah.
But,
And so he goes back, and it was written, his words drip like honey. And he started his message. She started crying. And her friends came forward, and they asked for forgiveness. And there was a big love feast.
Yeah.
And she apologized for, holding that, racial discrimination, that bias. Well, that's the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Harry doesn't get 1,000 people in Boston. And then in Providence, Rhode Island, he went there to plant churches with a guy named Jesse Lee. And so when Harry would go, whoever hung around Harry really came away better off and blessed. But all Jesse Lee did after he worked with Harry, and Jesse Lee never married either. A lot of those Methodists didn't. But he became, I think, a 2-term Senate chaplain and a 1-term House chaplain at the U.S. Congress. And we get all this neat stuff about a guy that really has been overlooked. And that's just for such time as this. Now we got 250 years American history, and you're helping a lot, Dana, just getting this word out.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to do it. So how did it become associated with Indiana, and how did Amtrak have anything to do with any of this?
Well, a guy, and that's all on our website. Let me do a plug. HarryHoosierProject.org, because we got the highlights of his life.
Go check that out. I'm gonna go check it out.
Oh, and you can donate if you like, if God leads you. Because obviously we're gonna have to raise some funds to do a movie.
Yeah.
But so back in now we only became a state in 1816. Harry died in 1806. He maybe never even crossed the river. He traveled a lot, but he never even got into the Indiana territory.
So it's just like Harry Hoosier fan number 1, like having to live in Indiana and start his fan club and be like, have you heard about this guy? His name's Harry. And
he was very dynamic and well known in the Methodist circles. Well, guess what happened? My great granddaddy left me a bunch of books, and I discovered in 2015 this, and I still have it. This 1880 it was printed, History of Methodism, and there's this chapter on a guy named Harry Hoosier. And I go, whoa, wow. That's fascinating. And I asked, and I saw Dave Barton had a whole video, a short one clip, but he said Harry Hoosier is the reason for the Indiana nickname. And then Christine and I started doing lots of research, and we traveled to all kinds of churches named after Harry Hoosier in Atlanta. Wow. Harry Hoosier Memorial, and we went to the church named after him where he was born in Fayetteville, I believe, North Carolina. And so it's just amazing what he did. Well, how did that all come? They came from Carolina. They migrated up to the Indiana Territory. And so they had to come through, Cumberland and Appalachia. But this interesting thing about that book was it characterized with bar charts, the various denominations and how they compared to the others in terms of population. In Indiana in the 1800s, Methodism ruled the roost. And so in about 1820s or 30s, a guy named John Finley wrote this poem called Hoosier's Nest. And it was the first time a literary printout using the word Hoosier got circulated in our state, and it got to be really popular, Hoosier's Nest.
Wow.
And people started adopting it, and they disliked that poem. It was so popular. And I guess Finley actually also wrote and submitted up, a poem for our national anthem. It didn't get, Francis Scott Key got that, but
yeah,
there's a little sidebar, a history.
Interesting.
But yeah, in the 1800s, Harry was known because we were so many Methodists. Now, that's not the way it is today or in the 1900s, but predominantly you were a Methodist if you lived in Indiana. Well, there were a lot of stories passed down. Harry never wrote a book because he couldn't read or write.
Yeah.
And so that you look at all, we'll debunk. You got a debunk section. And it's interesting. We're here at CPAC. It's interesting. So I ran for Congress a number of times in the 7th district, and I've always never made it. But there's a guy named Andre Carson who's a Democrat here, and since he's ruled the roost. And he's Muslim, and his grandmother had the seat before 2008, and it's urban. It's all Indianapolis. So, Democrats running the major cities.
Right.
But it's interesting. In the 7th district in the 1800s, there was a guy named Joseph Wright who went on to become governor. But he was one short term. He was a 7th district congressman. And so he came out and he said, oh, no, Indiana got the Hoosier nickname from this word Hoosa, H-O-O-S-A, which was from the Native American vernacular meaning corn. Well, you can read our website and you can say, oh, wait a minute. Linguistic professors and people did research on this. There never was a term Hoosa used by the Cherokee or by the Miami. He made that up, or I don't know where he got that.
Yeah.
Well, then in the 1900s, another guy runs for 7th district, and his name is J.P. Dunn, and he actually writes a book as a Democrat. So now I got one Democrat steering us away from Harry Hoosier. So in the 1900s, we got J.P. Dunn. He writes a whole book called The Word Hoosier, and he doesn't give Harry credit, but he does debunk, and we have all these debunkings from his book mostly, all these other ideas, knock on the door, who's there, and then there were other.
Who's your daddy?
Yeah, well, that's one of them. That's more recent. But he lost. He lost. He did not win. He did try to be a U.S. House rep, Democrat again, but he too, he didn't say no about Harry Hoosier, but he didn't say yes. So now I discover this Harry Hoosier story, and I do run for Congress. So you got the 1800s and 1900s in 7th district, and I'm running in the 7th district, but I'm saying, yes, it's Harry. But Andre Carson in 2023 did an article, and he included, and he said, yeah, it's Harry Hoosier. He goes, it was during Black History Month. And so anyway, we have a bill and we want it passed, and it'll really, do so good. Talk about, our school books going forward for the 4th graders and Indiana history.
That'd be great.
And for the nation to recognize, that's why we want to do a movie too.
Yeah.
Because he was Martin Luther King before Martin Luther King.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking when you were telling me that story.
He was just phenomenal. And it's a spirit of God. You don't get, how do those 1,000 people get called in? Well, the Holy Spirit draws us in. I mean, the scriptures talk about that. And that's the only way you could get that many people. And he was groundbreaking. In 1799, New York, because he preached up in New York quite a bit, their state legislature said, we are abolishing slavery. Then 1804, New Jersey, he spent a lot of time in New Jersey. We're abolishing slavery. If you read between the lines, Harry was the poster child because so many whites and blacks loved to hear him preach, and they gathered together, and he was a Methodist, and they were leading in the abolition movement. And then when he went in 1785, I think in May, Asbury and Koch and Harry went to be with George Washington, have dinner in Mount Vernon, so not far from here.
Yeah, I've been there.
And it's in our website, but George Washington said, so spend the night, we love you. This is great. But they said, no, we got to take off. We got to get back up to the State House because we're championing, abolition. We want to get rid of slavery too. And George, what did he do? He said, in my will, I'm getting rid of slaves.
Yeah.
So Harry, he wasn't a victim guy. He didn't feel like he was a victim. He just was the Lord's great servant. And so we're trying to bring that to, and I think we make a movie. It'll be really, you just got to pray and do it really right, but it'll move hearts.
It's going to happen.
Oh, thank you.
JD, thank you so much for coming in. I love the story. You learn something every day on the Lawyer Dana podcast here at CPAC Live 2025, and we're going to be back with more. Stay tuned. Like, subscribe, tell us what you think in the comments. Make sure you have your alert bell turned on so that you can see when we go live here in just a few minutes with another great guest. Thanks for watching. This is the Lawyer Dana Show.
Excellent.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I left you my card.